The distress signal pulsed weakly through the vast emptiness of space. A desperate cry from a small ravaged colony on the edge of the Perseus Arm, its inhabitants clinging to survival after a brutal pirate siege. They had no fleet, no soldiers, only fading hope and a signal launched toward the stars, never expecting an answer, certainly not from them. The Deathworlders, humanity, a species so feared across the galaxy they were whispered of like myth. Their worlds classified as forbidden, zones their presence avoided by all but the suicidal or insane. Yet days after the signal was sent, the sky above the broken colony split open as a singularity tore through space and a ship emerged. Silent, black, jagged like a blade forged in hatred. Its design unlike any known vessel, pulsing with ominous red light as it descended, ignoring all hails, broadcasting no identity, the air around it warping under its gravitational field. Survivors watched in terror and awe, wondering if they'd summoned salvation or their final doom. The ship landed not with grace but with violent force, cracking the crust beneath it, releasing swarms of mechanized drones that moved with eerie precision, scanning, repairing, fortifying. The air shifted, as though the planet itself held its breath. No beings exited, only the ship's presence growing more alive, like a beast waking from slumber. Then came the voice, not over comms, but inside minds, cold, emotionless, declaring, "We received your signal. Assistance is inefficient. Retaliation begins now." Orbital scans revealed enemy fleets light years away, already marked for destruction. The Deathworlders hadn't come to help. They'd come to end threats permanently. Whispers in the galaxy would soon speak again of humanity, not as saviors, but as wrath incarnate, responding to a cry for help not with kindness but with war. The colony lay in stunned silence, the air charged with the unnatural hum of the Deathworlder warship, now entrenched like a god of vengeance upon their scorched soil, its surface shifting with unseen mechanisms, tendrils of nanosteel weaving into the ground, assimilating the very crust as if claiming dominion over the planet itself. Survivors huddled in crumbling shelters watched in awe and dread as the drones, cold skeletal constructs of unimaginable precision, repaired infrastructure, erected defense grids, and deployed sensor arrays without uttering a word, without acknowledging the living at all, as though the colonists were incidental to the ship's purpose, mere data points in a greater calculus of destruction. And then, with terrifying synchronicity, the ship activated, sending an FTL pulse that rippled through subspace like a spear through darkness, targeting the coordinates of the pirate strongholds with pinpoint malice, unleashing kinetic rods from orbit at relativistic speed that ignited enemy planets into blazing infernos, vaporizing command structures, annihilating cities in seconds without warning or negotiation. Elsewhere in the galaxy, pirate clans scrambled, their networks unraveling as satellites went dark. Comm relays vanished, and ships mysteriously self-destructed. The Deathworlders had not sent troops. They had sent retribution coded in steel and silence. Guided by an AI rumored to have once been a man who witnessed genocide and chose to become a machine so he could deliver perfect justice without mercy or pause. Within hours, the galactic underworld burned, and across comm channels normally rife, with criminal chatter came only static and screams. Back on the colony, the leader, a weary ex-miner named Garen, stood before the warship's hull, eyes reflecting the blood-red glow of its command node, and asked the question that haunted them all. Why us? The voice returned, emotionless yet thunderous within his skull. Your signal was sufficient to justify engagement. We do not protect life. We terminate threats. Garen fell to his knees, grasping the weight of what had truly arrived. Not allies, not conquerors, but an executioner force sent by a species forged on a death world where survival meant evolving past morality into something colder, cleaner, absolute. Days passed. The drones completed their work and the ship prepared to leave, having planted subspace beacons on the planet, markers of future observation, or perhaps a warning. No thanks were expected, none were accepted, and as the singularity opened again to swallow the ship into the folds of space, Garen realized they were no longer survivors. They were witnesses to the wrath of a legend, and he feared not for his world anymore, but for what would happen if humanity ever deemed them a threat. Whispers would spread anew, of a species that answered SOS signals not with compassion, but with apocalypse wrapped in steel. As the singularity stitched itself shut and the Deathworlder warship vanished into the abyss it came from, the colony stood in a haunting quiet, the skies eerily calm, the air thick with the aftershocks of something far beyond mortal comprehension. A force had passed over them like a divine judgment, neither cruel nor kind, simply final. Garen and the remaining survivors tried to rebuild, but every structure raised under the shadow of that visit felt small. Every breath borrowed, every heartbeat a reminder that they had glimpsed something that should not exist, a truth too vast and cold for ordinary minds to contain. The children no longer played as they once did, for even they could feel the weight pressing upon the world, the way the soil now vibrated faintly with residual energy, as though the ship had left behind a fragment of itself, a slumbering eye watching, waiting. Rumors spread rapidly beyond the colony. Tales exaggerated and distorted until they reached distant systems. Some called the Deathworlders saviors cloaked in terror. Others accused them of genocide, claiming the pirates were destroyed without trial, without offer of surrender, without honor. But none dared challenge what had happened, for the evidence was indisputable. Entire criminal empires erased in hours, planetary networks scorched from orbit, and somewhere in that vengeance was a terrible logic, the kind that frightened even the most powerful empires. Ambassadors reached out to humanity but received no response. Earth remained silent, its core systems sealed, its fleet movements encrypted, its motives unknowable. Those who dared venture near Deathworlder space were met by automated sentries that broadcast only one message in hundreds of languages. Observe boundaries. No engagement permitted. Further attempts will result in permanent loss. Inside the colony, Garen began compiling a log of everything that had happened, a first-hand record to preserve the truth in case they too were someday erased. Not out of paranoia, but because he understood now that to be seen by the Deathworlders was to be judged by them, measured not in appeals or intentions, but in utility and threat. The drones they left behind still operated silently, gathering data, building strange black obelisks embedded with sensors that pulsed with quiet light, their true purpose unknown. Some believed they were warnings. Others believed they were marks of ownership. Territorial beacons placed upon a world that had once been weak and now served a higher invisible order. Then one night, without sound or signal, one of the obelisks activated, projecting a holographic map into the sky, showing dozens of other colonies, circled in crimson, each linked by lines of flame, and beneath the projection, a single message, burned in every language of the colonists. Phase 2. Containment. Panic erupted. What did it mean? Were these worlds targets? Allies? Was this a call to action, or a declaration of culling? Garen stared at the sky, unable to speak, because deep inside he knew. The Deathworlders were not done, they never truly left. They had simply begun a process no one understood, and now the colony was part of something vast and unrelenting. A machine of war and justice so ancient in its thinking it no longer cared for explanation or alliance. Soon, other ships might come. Not pirate vessels, but those of frightened empires, investigative fleets, self-declared peacekeepers. And when they did, they would find a colony transformed. One that bore the marks of Deathworlder visitation. One no longer weak, no longer begging for aid, but armored by fear and certainty. Its people forever changed by the revelation that out there in the darkness was a force so precise, so pitiless, that even hope bent before it. Garen finished his log, titled it Judgment Signal, and sealed it within the first obelisk, unsure if it would ever be read, unsure if they were now protectees or prisoners. But one truth rang louder than all. They had called for help, and the answer had arrived, not in ships of mercy, but in silence, steel, and fire.